It was a lengthy article, and all it spoke about is said when a tech startup fails, poor leaders should be held accountable for this failure exclusively. What is your honest opinion on this?
That it's exactly that. Leadership is the single greatest factor in any team's performance. And meaning that whether a team succeeds or fails depends on the leader. And most importantly, good leaders don't make excuses. Right? Instead, you leave your egos at the door and figure out a way for their teams to succeed. Perfectly. So that's why extreme ownership is all about. Right? It's not to make excuses. To say, okay, what do we do?
Our guest today is a leader in the tech space with over 20 years of proven leadership in driving transformative growth across businesses in tech organizations. Arnaud Lucas is currently the Chief Technology Officer at Wanderu, where he leads the strategy and vision of that company. I would allow him to introduce himself better as we get into it. But I'm really pleased to have him here today to discuss some of the challenges tech companies face today with regards to leadership and creating value in today's economy. Arnaud, how are you today? Happy to see you.
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Nathan.
It's a pleasure having you here today. I've been looking forward to this for almost a month. Arnaud, I just tried to introduce you to the audience, but in your own words, do you mind just telling the viewers what you currently do in the tech space?
Yeah, I think you summarized it very well. But if I have to say more about my career, I've always been about inspiring and leading kind of these high growth, technology first organizations, and to try to create that base or that foundation and be able to grow as I do that, right? So not scaling for the sake of scaling, but scaling in a way that's sustainable over the long term, right? So that's one of the things I like to do. And I believe one of my superpowers is really to take that business strategy, that business vision, and understand what we need to deliver on that. Not just from the technology aspect. I'm an engineer at heart, so obviously technology is top of mind for me, but also for many things. It could be process, it could be how do we make the delivery faster, it could be hiring the right people, organizing them in a way that makes sense for the organization and so on, right? So everything that you can think of that touch technology, I try to see what can help effectively to get the best business impact at the end. And as I mentioned already, I'm kind of passionate about hiring diverse, high-performing, high-trust teams. So I believe that an organization is all about the people. So, a big part of it is to bring the right people so that they are doing the best work, and then supporting them, empower them so that they can be successful. And as I mentioned before, I'm an engineer, right? So I have a very engineering background. I have very much a hands-on expertise in technology and architecture, but that means that I'm able to drive innovation as well, right, from a technology standpoint. So that's for me. Now you can hear from my accent that even though I'm based in Boston, I'm not from Boston originally. I'm from France, northern France, but I've been in the US now for like 26 years.
Interesting, and thanks for that nice explanation there. I admit I do not have a very good understanding of the tech landscape in France. Maybe on a separate episode we could just delve into that just to see how things look on that side of the world, which is great. But right now you're based and you work in Boston, right? Your company Wanderu is based in Boston, in the US?
Yeah, so Wanderu is their headquarters are in Boston, you're right. But since the pandemic, Wanderu has been remote only, so there is no office.
Okay.
So this is my office. This is where I work.
Makes sense.
So I'm based in Boston. The company is supposed to be based in Boston, but we don't have a place to meet. But we do something I pushed on early on, and we've been doing that, is really to meet company-wide every 6 months. Right? Working remotely can be hard, especially as a leader. So you need to have different tools in your toolbox to kind of be able to do that. Stay visible and other aspects. So one of the things, well, at least let's meet once in a while in different locations around the US, so that we can catch up from a social standpoint and build more trust.
Yeah. No, I mean, work from home, this is the era for hybrid working, right? Just after COVID. And I see you've got quite a lot of plans, more than I do, behind you. So you're comfortable that that's all that matters, really.
Well, so that's funny because I actually like to garden. Like, I come from the countryside. My father used to garden. My grandfather used to garden. My other grandfather was a farmer. So I have a garden in the back. Like, you can see I have plants around me. So that's something that I'm very comfortable with. It's funny because one of the things that I've been thinking about, because if you look at all my hobbies, one is gardening, another one is baking, another one is brewing beer. That's what I'm doing this afternoon.
Did you say drink? Did you say beer?
Yeah, making beer.
Making beer. Interesting.
Yes. So I like to do that too. But all these things, maybe it's because I'm an engineer, all the things about making things. And one of the parallels that I draw a lot is, how gardening can be related to leadership, right? So the fact that you try to grow plants and you have this whole ecosystem that you're trying to manage the best you can, and there's a lot of parallels, if you want, between gardening and being able to be a strong leader.
I completely agree. All those parts need to put together nicely and to synthesize anything meaningful, which is what gardening involves. We're definitely going to probably touch on that shortly in this episode. I know you mentioned briefly some of the studies and background you've had in tech, being a former engineer, so on and so forth. We're going to touch on that shortly as well, just to get a better feel of what you currently do. So right now you are a chief technology officer for Wanderu, and that's what takes, let's say, 100% of your time and effort and activities in the tech space, right? Or do you also run some parallel activities in the tech space at the moment? Maybe consulting, maybe, I don't know, any other side business in tech you're working on?
Side business, not really, but I do like to give back. So one way, for example, is that I'm actually an advisory member for an education institution in the Boston area.
Okay.
One of the way I advise is about the curriculum, right? Making sure, because that particular college, they tend to do like your post high school like diplomas, short-term diploma. It could be certificates, it could be 1 year associate degrees, and so making sure that when students graduate, they can find a job effectively, which means that they have learned what's important right now in the tech industry. So that's one way that I try to contribute effectively, is by advising. I'll say, hey, I'm seeing this in the market, I'm seeing this in the market, maybe they should learn this and that. And obviously, as you know, technology changes all the time. So we meet every couple of months, and every time there's something new.
Well, you're exactly who we need on this show today then. Just, looking back a bit, it's tradition on this show where the viewers are keen to get a good background, a good feel of our guests. So if you don't mind, could you give us a light walkthrough of your career, focusing mainly on the parts that are related to technology, right? Just basically from the early beginnings, probably walk us through your education as well. If there were some key qualifications you got along the way, which probably propelled you further in your career. I know our viewers would be interested in those pivotal moments, those critical certifications and education which were useful or were not useful along the way, all the way down to your current role as a CTO, please.
Okay, sure. So I can start from the very beginning. So when I was 9 years old, that's fair. When I was 9 years old, I asked for a game console. I think at the time it was the Atari console, right? So, and my father said no. My father said instead, I'm going to buy you a personal computer.
Okay.
You know, knowing that was a long time ago, right? So it was really the beginning of personal computers. He said, no, I'm not giving you a game console, I'm giving you a personal computer. And then I said, here you go. You know, Merry Christmas, you have a personal computer. And then I said, great, where are the games? And I said, well, I guess you have to make them yourself. But it went from there. I mean, after high school, I joined a university in France, UTC, Université Technologie de Compiègne, did my master there, did some exchange, I was an exchange student at McGill in Canada, did different things. You know, very good time. I really enjoyed that university.
And what was it you studied for the bachelor's and then for the
Computer
master's?
science.
Computer science. Okay.
Yeah, so it was computer science, but with a minor in artificial intelligence.
Oh, okay.
The university as well, you have to do like 2 6-month internships, so a year of internship. So I did one internship at Honeywell, which was great because it was embedded recorders, so recorders that are connected to a bunch of sensors on the manufacturing line. And I was in charge of the software, was part of developing the software effectively to then be able to capture the data, but also do things with the data. Like part of that was plotting the data, but also there are alerts, you could do math, and all these kind of things, knowing that it was very embedded, meaning that it's not connected to the internet or anything, like everything has to fit in that processor, so I had fun. And then the second internship was actually at France Telecom, so the big telecom company in France. So that was my experience in France in terms of your work. And after that, actually, I moved to the US. Well, that's not true. I did my military service before that. My military service, I was considered a scientist, but effectively I was doing software. Okay. I was doing accounting software for nuclear weapons. That was interesting.
Accounting software for nuclear weapons?
Yeah, because they have to budget everything, right? Yeah, it's like, but then after that, I did move to Houston. Okay. And in Houston, I did a couple of startups. One which was a security startup, effectively to provide security software for companies. And then the second one, where I stayed there for a while, actually, was called White Fence. And White Fence was meant to be this place where, let's say you want to move to a new place, new home, new apartment, doesn't matter, right? And you have this one-stop shop, effectively, where you can do everything you need to hook up anything you need so that you can move to your new place. So, for example, you want to do your change of address, we do that for you. You want to connect your cable, your electricity, you want to select your home insurance, you can do that. The thing is that, that sounds great, but what that means is that what I was doing on the back end of that is to integrate with all the service providers that provide all the services integrating in different ways. And then I moved to Boston. And then in Boston, I started still on the tech track as a senior engineer, but I became an architect at Arm Mountain Digital. And then I moved to TripAdvisor. And I joined there as same thing as on the tech track as an architect, effectively as a senior software engineer, and grew up to be more of an architect there. So did that. That was one of my first projects. I did that for a couple of years. Then moved to mobile. Work on mobile for a while, the API side, the mobile website, and enabling mobile overall. And then moved to vacation rentals, which is the ability for, it's like now the big kind of mammoth in that space is Airbnb, but TripAdvisor definitely has multiple brands, doing vacation rentals effectively. So be able to go to somebody's place for a bit. So did that for a while, then did what we call attractions or things to do. I think it's called experiences now, right? Which is you want to do some activity somewhere, you can book that on TripAdvisor as well. So I did all that. So I did different things over the years there. I stayed there for a very long time. I stayed there for 8 years.
Yeah.
But every time I felt like I had a different challenge. I did different tour of duty, as they call it in the book, The Alliance. So different tour of duty and be able to accomplish my mission. But at some point, I was like, okay, I've been there for a very long time, and I felt like I learned all my leadership at TripAdvisor. So I was like, will it be great if I can prove to myself that I can be a leader, but in a different organization? And that's when I went to Wayfair. So that was awesome. So I've been went for a while, prove myself I could be a leader in the different organizations. So check. But after a while, I said, you know what? Been there in the same department for a while. I should make a change. At that point, I was like, you know what would be good? If I go back to do a startup, but more as an executive. And that's how I landed at Wanderu, effectively. Wanderu is a startup, and I was able to join as CTO. And that's where I've been for the last 2.5 years.
Interesting. Whoa, what a long career, an exciting one too you've had. You've been out there in the tech block, so to say, in the trenches, and it's really good.
Well, not only that, but at TripAdvisor, Wayfair, even Wanderu, this were a period of growth. And growth is obviously it's always exciting because you prefer that than the company going downhill for sure. But it's also make it so that you have this kind of chaos because you don't have enough people to do what you need to do. You try to bring more people, but it's kind of this chaos, and your goal is really trying to keep the chaos at bay.
Speaking about the chaos, I know exactly what you're talking about. The larger these organizations are, the more you begin to wonder why they are even called organizations, right? Because it seems as if nothing is organized, and you wonder how they barely make any profit at all. But to the viewers, I'm sure your story has been enlightening, especially for those who are wondering, career in tech might be boring, might be mundane. No, you could really pivot. You could hop from one path to another and do a variety of things as you have done. So now, for example, when you speak, people would know you're speaking from a place of depth and experience, which not many can say, which makes you a rightful placeholder in the advisory board where you are right now. So yeah, I appreciate, and we appreciate you for sharing that background story. Just to jump into the theme for today then,
Yes.
The data, right? The data shows that roughly 90% of startups fail today. So that's an undisputed fact. I mean, it's been known and it's been, funny enough, it's been the same way for the past decade, unfortunately. And this is across industries, not just the tech industry. For the tech industry, it's really, really obvious and prevalent, this failure that happens to 90% of startups in the tech space. I was reading this article just barely last week. I think it's from this website, theinformationage.com. And the article mainly, it discussed poor leadership. That's the main reason why tech startups tend to fail. Poor leadership. I just wanted, this is not a question, I really just wanted to get your opinion on this article. It was a lengthy article, and all it spoke about is said, when a tech startup fails, poor leaders should be held accountable for this failure exclusively, right? The blame should not go to engineers. The blame should not go to marketing or sales. It should always stay right up there, the C-suite, with the tech leadership. What is your honest opinion on this?
I agree. I mean, for me, lack or bad leadership can be detrimental in any organization. Or the difference usually in startup, you don't have that much cushion. So you can make some mistakes, but not that many. Versus if you have a big organization that have many leaders and all that, you can balance your way out. But I agree. There is this book called ExtremeOwnership: How U.S. Navy SEALs lead and win, and that's exactly what they say. Like the biggest factor in the success, in that case, of a Navy SEAL team is the leader. Doesn't matter what else, right? It's the leader, because ultimately, even if you say, you know what, let's say you want to blame. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that likes to blame anything. But let's say you say, oh, that person at that team is not doing their job. Guess what? That should be the leader's job to then deal with it, right? So then, okay, that person is not good, and you're not able to grow that person. Replace that person. Do something, right? So that's ultimately you can. There is nowhere else to go, right? If something fails, is because of the leaders.
That concept of extreme ownership, I know what it means, but do you mind just expounding what that means for the audience, for anyone who might not know that?
So, I mean, the concept of extreme ownership, I'm not sure why they call it extreme, to be perfectly honest, because for me, it's not like a cult or anything. It's very relatable, at least for me, or maybe I'm extreme, I don't know. That it's exactly that. Leadership is the single greatest factor in any team's performance. And meaning that whether a team succeeds or fails depends on the leader. And most importantly, good leaders don't make excuses, right? Instead, you leave your egos at the door and figure out a way for their teams to succeed. Effectively. So that's what extreme ownership is all about, right? It's not to make excuses. You say, okay, what do we do, right? So sometimes you have external factors, right? I know lately SEO has been a concern for many companies because Google keeps on tweaking the algorithm, and I was like, where are my users? Like, things like that. You can blame Google, right? Or you can figure out, okay, fine, that's happening. How do we fix it? Or do we need to diversify or where we're getting users now more than before? Like, that's the extreme ownership mindset, is that even if you didn't cause the issue, you still have to deal with it for the survival of the company. So that's really what this is about. So, and sometimes things that you can do or your team can do that you push, sometimes you can influence other areas that you don't have full control over, but you do everything you can to make the team successful. And so that's what extreme ownership is about. The other aspect of extreme ownership, which I think is important, and I really care about that, is that, in my opinion, everybody in the company is an owner. Right? Everybody in the company should own something, especially in tech organization, because in tech organization, first of all, engineers are not cheap, just to be honest. So you want to pay them not just to write code, but actually to think, right? And you want them to think. And for that, you don't just want to give them tasks. You want to give them something that they can own, so that they can figure out, okay, this is where we are now. Where should we go? How do we get there? And so on, right? So I think for me is that your decisions are always best made the closer by the person who is the closest to the problem or the opportunity. And that's what I believe too, meaning that it's not like the leader doesn't make all the decisions, right? Everybody is owner in some shape or form. Everybody should be able to make decisions. Now, leader should obviously make sure that to set the proper context, to make sure that person fully understands what's happening with the company, with the industry at large, and all that, so that they can make the best decision. Right, but ultimately, that's what it is about, right? Is that in an organization, you say, oh, the CEO is the only one accountable and is the only one that can make any decision. No, everybody should be thinking every day about what they are doing and why, and potentially switch our approach, right? So extreme ownership is not just a team leader thing or executive things. Everybody. That said, at the end of the day, if somebody is not making the right decisions, in the company, that's a leader's problem, right? At the end of the day, that's an executive's problem. At the end of the day, that executive needs to fix. And if they don't, then that's one reason where companies can fail.
It's good that you put things into perspective so nicely, and I completely agree that it's good to give this decision-making power to many employees within the organization, not just high up there at the C-suite strata, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't always happen this way, just from my experience, especially the larger the organization is, right? The more decisions tend to be made higher up. And then the engineers right there, creating this product, whatever that is, they end up with just specific tasks that they have to perform week after week, whether they agree with it or not, right? They just always have to go with whatever strategy some C executive has put together on the roadmap, and they just have to play along, which is unfortunate,
You're right. Ultimately, leaders have to provide a strategy, right? Yeah, that's one of their main job is to say, this is where we're going. This is our vision. This is our insight. And these are some strategies we should go after. I do believe that there is opportunity for teams. When you're a leader, the last thing you want is just say, we are doing this. What do you think? No, I think it should be a 3-step process, right? Which is first, you want to gather inputs from the team, right? In different ways. It could be brainstorming, it could be when you really have a big organization, it could do surveys and then have some brainstorming sessions. Like there are different ways, but ultimately you want to get input from the team, and then make sure that input obviously is incorporated into your thinking, is incorporating the leadership strategy in some ways, and then you provide. Okay, therefore this is where we're going. And at that point, what's going to happen is that, sure, you ask for feedback again, just in case you miss something, right? That's something very critical. But at that point, at least, one, you heard what the team has to say, because good ideas can come from anywhere, so you don't want to neglect that. Two, you get more buy-in that way, because people say, oh, at least he asked me. Now, maybe I didn't take that idea that somebody suggested, but they know at least I listened. Right, and I took that into account, and then maybe I say not to go with that, but that's okay. At least they are the voice in some ways, right? So I think that's something that I really care about, right? Especially because you're right, especially when you're on engineering side, I feel like there are a lot of stakeholders that have very strong opinions, and yet technology as well. You need, if you don't update your technology is dead, effectively. So you always need to keep moving, right? You always need to update and do something different. And so engineering needs a strong voice, effectively, to be able to do that. And one of it, I think that's critical for success, right? For long-term success of a company. So it's how do you take that voice and make sure that you amplify that voice at the right level, so that ultimately we have a more comprehensive strategy of everything we do.
No, makes perfect sense, and if you and I were to respond to that article, which is blaming poor leadership as the number one reason for tech startup failures, I would like to get maybe from you, if you could expatiate more on some solutions on what your definition of good tech leadership should look like. I know you've mentioned roughly about 2 so far. You mentioned leaders should always make informed decisions, right? They shouldn't just go blindly making decrees and rules and regulations without consulting people, which is good and fine. If you were to just write your own article and say, okay, good tech leadership should follow these steps or should approach things this way, what would your response be to that?
I think good leadership is recognizing that it's all about the people. Now, the people are what makes an organization. The people define the culture. The culture is not set by the leader. The culture is set by everybody in the company. The people do the work. The people have the right level of impact. So I do believe in people first strategies for organizations.
And technology second.
When I mean people first, it doesn't mean that we protect the people at all costs or anything like that. It's more the fact that ultimately you have to be able to hire, you have to be able to organize people, you have to be able to empower people, you have to support them, to show them the direction and other things so that they can make the best decisions, as I mentioned. But it's all about the people. It's like, as a leader, it's like, do I have the right people in place, doing the right job, in the right team, and how do I make them more successful? Right? And technology has a role to play. Right? Technology is everywhere. Right? It doesn't matter what people you talk about. It doesn't matter if it's marketing, HR, engineers themselves. Everybody needs technology, to be performant. So that's where technology comes in. Now, there is another aspect too. I think you touched on that. Is you need to have a data-driven approach to things. I've seen too many leaders that tend to go with their guts and their guts alone. Now, or they hear something that somebody's saying, oh, we should do this. Or in technology, usually the best way to see that is that somebody hear a buzzword and say, oh, we should do that. It's the latest and greatest thing. We should. And the problem with that is that that's fine to have gut feeling, by the way. Like, it comes from experience. You accumulate a bunch of experience over the years, and you have these heuristics in your head to say, if we want to do something, we should do something like that, right? But I think it's also very important to have data to show you if you're on the right track, and then to keep on iterating. And every step that you take iterating, you look at the data, you learn from what's happening, and you adjust your trajectory accordingly. Right? Or you just say, you know what, that's actually not working, let's do something else altogether. So data is critical, which means that companies have a lot of data. It doesn't matter what size. Every company has a lot of data. The problem is not necessarily to have the data. It's to have the data in one place and make it so the data is actionable, so that everybody in the company can have access to the data in the way that they need to, at least for 80% of their needs. And then 20%, sure, they can bother an engineer for it. But at least for 80%, it should be like self-service. It should be, they can get what they need from the data easily. And so that's something that's very important to me, because otherwise they cannot do their job right. Otherwise they cannot make the best decisions, because they don't, getting that data becomes a high friction point, and they are not able to move fast, or they just don't bother gathering the data. So, that's what I mean by having a data approach, right? Is by, if you give, it's like we always say on the tech side, right? If you make it simple for engineers will do that. It's not because engineers are lazy. Why do things complicated when you don't have to, right? So if you have the right tooling and everything for engineers to do the right thing, they are going to do the right thing. It's almost guaranteed. Like, they are very rational people. Same thing for everybody else, right? You give them the tool to get what they need, they are more likely to do that than do the wrong thing and not get the data they need, for example. So for me, that's also very important, having that data-driven approach. And then there is that technical expertise, right? For everything that your employees need, for everything that the product needs, what kind of technical approach you need to have. But same thing, right? Good ideas come from everywhere, right? So how do you drive innovation? Innovation by itself is all about getting everybody to in a creative mind, so that they are able to do new things that they didn't do before. Right? That's what innovation is, effectively. So it's how you create a culture of innovation, so that everybody feels empowered and feels motivated and passionate about effectively do new things, to solve the problems and opportunities at hand. So I think for me that's kind of what leadership needs to be, and in order to create innovation, usually it means having a collaborative environment, having a strong culture. I care about ownership. I already mentioned that, but I care about transparency as well. I care to be transparent, so that's how, by providing the right information to people, by providing them the right level of feedback, by hearing the right level of feedback, so that when I screw up something, I can learn, fix it, and make sure I don't do it again. Because every organization is different. I think, for me, that's critical. And I care about diversity, right? Because it has been proven scientifically that diverse teams are more productive teams. They have more impact because everybody's bringing something different. They are bringing different kind of thinking because there are very different experiences in the past. So how do you bring diversity as well is something I care about. So that's where I'm coming from leadership aspect.
Interesting. No, and you make very good, solid points there. There's also something I wanted to get your opinion on. It's not an easy concept, but you've been in the field for a long time. I'm sure you get exactly what I'm about to explain. Is this tacit, seldom spoken about war between adaptability, right? A company being flexible to changes, and also having a fixed strategy, a fixed focus.
Yes.
This is something especially leaders struggle with, right? It's one thing for a company to have a fixed strategy, a focus on a particular goal, way of working, culture, processes, and then also being flexible and ready to adapt to, changes in the economy, geopolitical events happening, customer demands changing, pivoting overnight, changing the entire goal and maybe technical product itself, right? Companies tend to struggle with this. And I bring this up because I know there's one particular experience I've had with a company where it was a startup company and they invested heavily. So they had a CTO already. However, they still contracted a chief strategy officer who came in, hired for 2 months, carved out a strategy on an Excel, on a PowerPoint, distributed this to the company and left, right? And the tech startup planned to use that for the next 2 years, which I don't know if that's really a great way to approach things, especially as you've mentioned the importance of studying data and then adjusting as you go along. So now I just wanted to get your opinion on this aspect, and maybe if you could provide some insights to the viewers. How should they value having a solid strategy over being completely adaptable and just jumping into the water without being 100% certain about issues?
I'll go back to domain ownership, and to that ownership aspect, because what I care about, right, from a technology side, usually is the order prime of that flexibility, where the leaders, good and bad, try to do too many things at once, or there is a spotlight thing, meaning that one day they look at this and say this is very important, one day they look at that and say this is very important, and you keep on swinging all over the place, right? And that's very detrimental as well, because engineers need time to do the work and to focus and to really do things. So the way I see it is that you need to find that balance, as you mentioned. And the way I try to find that balance is by distributing ownership. So, for example, through domain. So one of the things I did at Wanderu, but all the previous companies, really understanding what domains exist, cross-functional domains exist within the company. And you can start very high level. The company itself is a domain. And then you make your way down, right? So I say, well, I have customers on one side that I need to serve. That's a domain. I have partners on the other side that providing me the inventory or the data. That's another domain. Or I need to bring customers to my platform. That's another domain. That's marketing. That's traffic acquisition in some ways. So be able to carve that out. And when you're a startup, you don't need to go that far down to already have big domains that teams can own. But what I like to have is cross-functional teams, basically, where everybody, not just tech, but everybody that can make that domain successful is part of that team. And what happens there is that then I say, great, team A, now you own that domain. And what happens there is that then team A, as we talk about, come up with a strategy to be able to best grow that domain, right? Make it better, deal with the tech debt aspect, but also opportunities for growth and so on, based on the strategy and business vision of the company, right? So that fits into their thinking, and then they come and say, okay, well, therefore we should focus on this and that, but also keep the lights on, right? Always keep on improving. So that's one way to tackle that. But then still, right, your domains change over time, right? Or domains become more or less important over time, right? So meaning that maybe at some point, not only you need to do like KTLO, keeping the lights on, meaning that keep the business as usual, but you need to do an extra push on them. Great, then you bring people from other teams to help, grow that domain. At some point, you say, you know what, I've done enough there. You still want to keep that domain alive, so you still want to have that team, but you don't need as many people on it, right? And then you go with, where you believe is your next area of growth, right? So that's one aspect. And how you decide that is very simple. It's because you plan, right? So whether we do it quarterly, that's what I'm used to, but on an X month basis, you rethink your business vision, your business strategy, you adjust. And then based on that, same thing, each team figure out if they are still aligned with that and what should be their next area of opportunity. And then at the leadership level, say, okay, well, team X says that the biggest opportunity is to do that, and this is the kind of impact they expect. Team Y is saying, well, this biggest query is that, and that's the kind of impact. I say, well, as a leadership, you have to decide which one do I want to bet more on, right? So it's not static, and then that's how you kind of potentially migrate some people here and there, or invest more heavily on one side versus another, based on what are your biggest bet, and that's how you achieve focus. Because each team, they should not come up with 10 things that they want to do, right? There should be one objective or two objectives that they're like, we really need to go after these things, which means that and that's as part of the owning their domain. And then at the leadership aspect, you look at everything that's happening, and you're like, yeah, we really need to push on that side more than this side, and then you adjust accordingly. But the team still exists, right? The team exists for the long term because they need to own their stuff. Because if you keep on moving everybody around, then nobody owns anything, and at some point you have a house of cards because you have bits and pieces that have not been maintained for a very long time.
Yeah.
So you don't want that, but you also want the flexibility so that people can, as they revise the strategy, the team is able to adjust the strategy and still deliver on what the new area should be, and use a mechanism to focus.
Yeah, no, very important point you made there. Hopefully it's really clear for the listeners that this thing called strategy should preferably always be a flexible thing. It should be always in flux, right? Strategy is not something you hire a CSO for 2 weeks and then you put your head down in the trenches and you dig. That's not how it works. And thanks for that, Arnaud. As we...
Yeah, not like that, but the problem with that CSO, for example, would be that you want to have that ownership over the long term. Like, not only you want to come up with a strategy, you want to be in the trenches and execute on it, because that's how you know if it's working or not. Right? So how do you know otherwise that it's the right strategy? Like, and there is only one way. You try, you learn, and then you adjust, right? So that the other aspect is that on the technology side, where there are plenty of architects, and they only care about designing beautiful architecture, and then they let the other rest of the team deal with it, and then the teams usually tend to grumble because it's hard, and but that's because the architects are over there, and then the teams is struggling over here, and they don't see that. Right?
Yeah.
So,
no, I agree. I mean, decision makers should always keep a good eye, be there to see how their decisions evolve over time. There is this meme on the internet, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's about this business consultant. He was sitting in the prison one day just thinking and he was wondering whatever happened to all those businesses he advised, how far they've gone, and he was laughing because that's the way it happens. You don't give advice and then you don't wait around to see how effective your advice really is so that you could tweak and learn from. So that's a very relevant and important point you raised there. Just as we're running out of time quickly, Arnaud, I would like to just maybe, go full circle and close with this. For the viewers who are watching this, they're looking someday to become effective tech leaders, what are some, if you may summarize some essential skill sets they should focus on developing especially in this day and age where technologies come. We've got AI there taking a lot of the mundane jobs, including coding and programming, unfortunately. What are some critical skill sets tech leaders should aim to develop to succeed in today's market?
Yeah, so for me, from my own experience, I would say there are two things that seems contradictory, but they are not. One is that I think it's very important, no matter what, to really build your technical expertise. I've seen a lot of young engineers effectively starting going to management early on. I don't think that's a good idea, right? Because at least in tech, right, there is this strong assumption from every business that even if you're in leadership, even if you're in management, or you are an executive or whatever, if you're in technology, it means that you should have a strong technology background. And so you really want to take time to really stay in the technology, close to the technology, do things, learn from that, go through enough mistakes, learn from them, so that before really going on into that management or side or management track, as they call it. So that's one aspect, right? Really stay close to the tech for a while, for a long time, as much as you can. Companies usually have needs. Like usually you end up in management by, sometimes not by choice, but more because companies say, "Oh, you seem good, and we need somebody. Why don't you do it?" But be careful that if it's too early in your career, please say no. So that's one advice. The other advice, which may seem contradictory, is that especially in this day and age with AI, generative AI, and so on, it's very important for engineers to cultivate their soft skills, as we call them. The ability to communicate, the ability to collaborate, the ability to understand the business. Right? The engineers tend to want to, just as I just said, really get deep into technology. That's great. I just said that that's what they should be doing. But they should also very much be cultivating their ability to really collaborate, communicate, and understand the business that they are trying to make an impact on. As I mentioned before, like everybody should be an owner. To be an owner means to be a leader, effectively. So, and you can be a leader and be coding every day. That's not the plan. That's actually it's not exclusive. And that's really what you should be doing, is really, trying to cultivate how can I be a better help in the organization? How can I make a bigger impact? And while staying technical. And I think that the soft skills that ultimately would be very hard for any generative AI to replace, right? Because if you have a good business acumen, right, you understand what the business wants, because you have this curiosity about not just tech but everything else, then you are going to do better than generative AI and be able to find ways to help and having that impact, right? I talked before about everybody needing to think and own their area, and I think that's the only way that you can own something, not just by having experts into that area, but also because you understand where that area fits in the overall context of the business. And so those soft skills, I think, are critical today.
The duality of the skill set you've just explained, as you said, many would argue they are quite, diametrically opposed. Soft skills to hard skills, even from the name alone, right? Can be soft and hard at the same time. So I'm going to put a very difficult question to you, Arnaud. If you were to just pick one without explaining, from your experience, if you were to pick which was most important for tech leadership, right? Hard skills or soft skills, which would you pick?
I believe soft skills.
Soft skills. I completely agree with that. And many do not know why, but we're probably going to explain on a different episode. But soft skills, it's so important. It's about managing teams, technical teams. Hard skills, as you said, very important. But the soft skills, I would put that a little bit at a higher level than hard skills. Thanks for that, Arnaud. Finally, Arnaud, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made in your tech career? If there's one particular route you went down in the past, and if today you were to advise someone, say, whatever you do not go down that particular route, what would that be?
My biggest mistake was not having the right soft skills in my career. I mean, I'll be honest. Like I believe, people agree. I believe I was a very strong engineer technically. Like people always say, "Yeah, you're amazing," but you're not great to collaborate with. So,
yeah, I just don't want to leave our listeners hanging. Are there some things you did in particular to improve your soft skills? You went and took some extracurricular courses. Did you really focus and channel your education to get those soft skills?
So management is something that you have to learn. It's not something that you are born with. So you have to do some training or something. Right? There is no other way. Or at least that's my belief. Right? So yes, I did get some education in management and leadership. I went to WPI, which is local here, to get at least a certificate in that. But then I think what's more important is to be humble and open to feedback. Right? And it doesn't change today. Like I still make mistakes all the time. I wish I didn't, but that's just the way it is. And so, but be able to, be approachable and be able to hear that feedback. And feedback is a gift, right? And for me, is your continuing education right there, right? Is that, you have some basis, but that's how you get better and better. It's because people tell you screw up. And you're like, thank you. And then you try to do your best to fix it and work from it, not do the same mistake again next time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, becoming a good leader is an iterative process, and it's better to channel your focus on becoming a good leader rather than just winging it and believing it's going to happen overnight. Thank you so much, Arnaud. This has been an exhilarating and very information-rich episode. I believe you've left the audience with quite a lot to think about in the next coming weeks, I would say. Arnaud, where can the viewers find you online for anyone who is looking?
So I'm on LinkedIn for sure. That's my preferred platform. So LinkedIn is the way to go. I try to answer all my messages on LinkedIn as well. So if people want to reach out, they should feel free. But that's my best place for that. I also have an Instagram, but it's mostly where I show cakes that I made. not as relevant.
Yeah. There you have it. Thanks again, Arnaud, for coming on the show. It was an absolute delight having you. Hopefully you're going to come back sometime in the future. Maybe if you're working on some cool and exciting projects you would want to share, or if you make some colossal, phenomenal mistakes that you would like to share with the public, we are all ears and would always like to listen to that.
Always a pleasure. I'm always very transparent, so I'm no problem sharing those.
On that note, we bring this long episode to an end. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and share your feedback on how the show went and what you would like to see more of, so we could always bring that to you. Until the next episode, cheers.